Now, we begin. And indeed, greetings unto you once again, beloved and holy children of light divine. Once again, it is our honor to come forth and abide with you, to communicate with you in this manner and in this hour. We come forth yet again to join with you, because the sole purpose of creation is to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. And what greater good could there be than to create a medium of communication that can call forth from the Christ mind to every aspect of the sonship in such a way that that mind is stirred to seek ways to heal its illusions and therefore return home to the recognition of what has never changed. What could be more holy than to use each moment of relationship in the recognition that only God's children can truly relate one to another, and that the purpose of their relationship is to heal illusion, that the holy might be extended. And what could be more beautiful than to join together, you and we, in this moment, to recognize that what is truly beautiful is the recognition that I and my Father are one. Therefore, the extension of the good, the holy, and the beautiful needs to become your sole purpose as it has become ours. For only when the mind is used for this purpose alone can there be the perfect remembrance of the kingdom. And you have sought us out because you desire the kingdom, because the weight of your illusions has become too painful. The games that you have sought to play within the dream of separation no longer satisfy, no longer seduce you, no longer gratify your imagination. And beneath all dreams you have heard the call of the one who sent you forth and asks you, little child, return. I am with you still. Let us create together the good, the holy, and the beautiful. The only difference that can yet seem to remain between us and yourself is that all of us involved in this work, from what you might perceive to be the other side, are merely beings, aspects of mind like yourself, that within the illusion of time, within the playing out of time, seem to have chosen before you to heal all illusion and return home. Therefore, we call to you from across the very thin veil of illusions that yet seem to keep you where you are, seemingly separate from us. That illusion, by the way, is not the physical body, nor is it the physical dimension, since in reality, the physical dimension does not exist. What exists is thought, streaming forth from mind, creating or outpicturing that which has been held within the mind. So the very physical body becomes only a symbol of what the mind has decided to believe. Surely I'm separate from God. That is the outpicturing I want. So I will look upon a physical body, identify myself with it, and therefore seem to peer out from the body and see great distance between myself and others. And if there is a great distance between myself and other bodies or forms, then surely there is an unfathomable gulf between myself and God. But when perception has been cleansed, when perception has been purified, the body itself becomes transparent to consciousness, to the witnessing awareness of mind. And it sees no longer that with which it is identified. It sees only the phenomena of mental energy temporarily being played out in the field of space and time. The body itself no longer becomes a barrier or obstacle to overcome. The body itself no longer is seen or perceived as something that can bring love to it, or can reach out and attract or draw to itself what has been perceived as valuable in the world. Rather, the body becomes one thing, a temporary opportunity to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. In other words, even the body itself can have no purpose save that which the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, the right-mindedness within you would give to the body. Therefore, if you would know a body at peace, if you would know a body that serves only the function of being a communication device for the love of God, cease in perceiving it as your own and give up the apparent right to make decisions for yourself in regard to the body. We have suggested to you before that you cease using the term my or mine whenever you refer to the body. Merely refer to it as the body. As a carpenter would pick up a tool and say, the hammer, the saw. Or an artist would say, the brush. For the wise carpenter does not identify himself with the hammer or saw, and the wise artist does not feel neglected when the brush is laying in a tray. Wisdom, then, looks upon form as merely temporary communication devices. The delight is to extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. Illusions can seem to take many forms, yet they all have one source: a decision to perceive oneself as separate from God. The best way to do that is to convince yourself that because you are separate from God, there must be many things about you and your life that are out of alignment with the will of God. Therefore, you will manifest many variations that seem to express the instability which is the effect of that one belief, one perception. I am separate from God. I have accomplished the impossible. Let me keep it in place. Illusions, then, while the form of them may seem to be many, are really one. And healing occurs when in the depth of the mind the decision is made to surrender, to give up the insane idea that oneself could possibly exist apart from the mind of God. Surrender means to settle into the position of the servant, the conduit through which the mind of God, the love of God, can be expressed. The mind that exists in perfect surrender sees absolutely no purpose to any moment of experience save this. The mind in perfect surrender looks out upon a world that has been healed from its own misperception that the world has had power over it. It sees that at no time has it experienced anything but its own outpicturing. This is why all events are neutral. It is mind that interprets an event, draws a conclusion, and then bases behavior upon it. The mind that is healed and that rests in surrender looks out upon an innocent world that has been touched by its blessing of forgiveness. And that forgiveness is simply a step in which that mind recognizes that the world it had thought was there was nothing more than its own mental creation, and smiles and laughs and sees that the world has held no power, and that all events that have arisen, all interpretations of events, have been generated from within the kingdom of the mind, the one place that it is given unto you to assume responsibility for as your domain. The mind that has been healed of illusion has been healed of all illusions. And while time and space seem to last, the last outpicturing of a tiny, mad idea, called the physical body, can be given over to something else, can be transformed into a simple communication device that no longer communicates separation, judgment, but rather forgiveness and innocence. It becomes nothing. And it is picked up and used only in those ways that can speak, gesture, move, act, make something in the world that touches the world with the blessing of the good, the holy, and the beautiful. Because this is simply the truth, it must mean that where you perceive justification for anything less than peace, it must mean that you have already decided in the deeper part of your mind to maintain this root or core misperception. That is, you are still attempting to perceive yourself as having accomplished the impossible, to have separated yourself from the mind of God. The mind that is surrendered looks out upon all things and quietly says within itself, there has only been God, and I am the created of that. And the source of my being, the source of my reality, rests in surrender into that, and that alone. The mind that is surrendered yet walks in your world as long as the body lasts, and is often completely unrecognized by others around it. For others see a body and therefore assume there is an individual, an ego, a separated being within it as that body. You could say that body walks as an empty shell and is merely waiting to be informed by the love of God. And when the love of God does not inform you or ask you to move and take action, then simply rest and do nothing. And this is why the final state of awakening is incomprehensible in the languages of your world, since your languages are based on the very thought of separation itself. This is why when we speak of peace, we speak of that peace which is beyond all understanding. For the peace that you can understand in the languages of your world are unconditional pieces, the kind you create when two warring nations sit down with suits and ties on and forget the body counts and the destroyed villages. And they sign some document with a pen. They put on a front and smile for the pictures, and then they assume and teach everybody else to assume that now there is peace. Then each goes back and secretly continues to build weapons of defense against the attack sure to come from the one still perceived as an enemy. Peace cannot be bargained for. It is not the result of compromise. Peace comes only when any mind surrenders unconditionally the dream of the dreamer, him or herself, so that there is only God and God's creation. And we have shared with you before that that creation is one, the Christ mind. And that mind is not in body. It is not a particular form and certainly does not belong to any personal entity. I was never the Christ, as though you are not. Like you, I was a temporary modification of eternal energy, an outpicturing of a thought, a mental thought, held in mind, which learned to surrender the misperception of the dreamer and became informed only by Christ mind. Only that mind was present, and yet it could not be touched through the body. That is why my crucifixion had no effect on me whatsoever. It merely sped up the process whereby the body was dissolved away as an idea. Beloved friends, those of you that have been with us monthly, so consistently, come now in your understanding as we take pause slightly from all of the technical work we've been doing of late to change how you use consciousness. Take pause with us to remember the truth. The world that you look out upon is innocent. The cause of the world is not found in the world, but only in the thoughts held within the mind. You remain perfectly free to choose to perceive differently. You remain free at all times to see that you are not the victim of circumstance, not the victim of a relationship, a career, what you call being born into a certain nation. You are never the victim of anything, since nothing within an illusion holds the power to truly have any effect on you. You are the one who remains free to assume responsibility for the domain of your mind. You are the one who is free to simply say, Father, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And what will does the Father have, save that you be happy by returning to the peace that forever passes all understanding? What could your Father will for you but that you awaken from the dream, that there is something in the world that can add value to you, that there is someone, some career, some location, some what have you, that can actually add substance to your being. And better than this, to become freed of the perception that the lack of someone, something, some career, some location, some form of any kind could detract from your being, from your perfect power of union with God. Peace then comes from a decision, and then a decision that is put into practice over time, in which the world is released. And released from what? From your belief that it should somehow be for you the conduit whereby you gain good feelings, love, peace, wisdom, ideas, comradeship, and even brother or sisterhood. Detachment does not mean avoidance, but it does mean disidentification with a mistaken idea. All suffering stems from this. Identification of the deep mind or the soul with the forms that pass as outpicturings in this illusion. The belief that loss is possible and also that gain is possible. There can only be the recognition of what is true through the practice of extending the good, the holy, and the beautiful. When the mind reaches this following point, the end of illusion is very, very near. When any mind looks out upon its creations that it's attempted to make of itself and finds all of it lacking, something missing, the life is simply not there. When that mind simply decides to withdraw the value it has placed on the world and rests into the simple desire to be with God, then heaven is but a step away. And that final step is taken by your Creator for you. The dream of separation has been your responsibility. When you reach that point of collapsing, so to speak, or surrendering, you enter into the stage of restoration or salvation, and that is in the hands of your Creator. When restoration has been completed, and the mind no longer seeks to journey out into the fields of illusion, but simply rests, empty, at one with God, then creation can begin anew, and co-creation is in the hands of both you and your Creator. The only difference is that you're no longer a separate being like a gnat shouting at the universe, demanding that things be done your way, but rather you are empty. You are the paradox of all paradoxes, for you are filled and only Christ abides, and yet not you lives, but only that one. And even the arising and the passing away of the body is of no concern for you. You merely rise in the morning and simply say, Father, how would you have me be present this day? And something else informs your steps and your decisions. And you are no longer identified with the fruit of your action. You are no longer concerned with how it may look or how it may compare to somebody else's action. You merely abide where you are, doing what you're doing, offering it freely because you are no longer attached to it. Peace is the essence of the message that we would share with you in this hour. Again, as a temporary break, a temporary resting period from the work that we've been doing this year. Rest assured there is much more to be done, for when the mind is surrendered, resistance dies to the very extension of creation. And that mind no longer seeks to leave any dimension whatsoever, for where would it go? It merely becomes one, willing to enact whatever is being extended to it from the mind of God as a way of being involved with the extension of love. That requires then learning how to use consciousness differently. But it is all predicated on a return to peace. That is why, above all things, your responsibility is to enter into surrender. To let the tiny mad idea of a separate self be dissolved entirely from the mind, so that there is only the mind of Christ. Beloved friends, pause then in this moment. Observe the place that you are. In truth, is there anything around you in your current environment that could add anything to your substance? If you could find a way to possess it or digest it, would it puff you up? It might add a few pounds if you happen to have ice cream in front of you. But that is only to the body. Likewise, as you look upon your environment, imagine if the things around you were taken away. Would that take anything from you? And if you can feel the simple truth of the questions that we are asking, then surely you can come to sense that just beneath your involvement in the world of form, peace is already available, because love waits on your welcome. Will the world of form seek to pull you into identification with it? Oh yes, because that is part of the very outpicturing you once created. Would that I could create a world that will pull at me so much that it will distract me from the one thing I need to do. And when it does, I can say that, well, I'd be awake now, except that all of these other things and all these other people need my attention more than God. And so if only they would go away, I could know God. If I could just disappear into a cave somewhere or a cell in a monastery and shut out the world, then I could know God. That approach never works. Recognition is not dependent on any specific state of body or lower mind. It is not necessary to spend endless hours in meditation seeking to quiet the mind. It is only necessary to withdraw value from what arises in the field of the lower mind, so that, quite naturally, what arises, what is recognized, is the perfect value that is held in your prior union with God. This is why awakening, salvation, or enlightenment is not a change at all, merely a recognition of what has always been, what will always be, eternally. Now in this moment, are you free to choose anew? Now are you free to rescind your judgments of the world? Now, in this very moment of eternity, you can choose to recognize that you are already perfectly awake, freely choosing what outpicturings you will pour forth from the mind, freely choosing whether to think for yourself or to think with God, whether to believe your outpicturings or to see them as temporary clouds passing through an infinite sky that the clouds have never affected or influenced. You are free now to simply say within yourself, I can choose peace instead of this. I am surrendered, and nothing matters save the extension of the good, the holy, and the beautiful. Therefore, Father, in this moment, what is your will for me? Empty of self, empty of striving, empty of the need to be right, the need to judge, the need to perceive anything in any certain way at all. Freed from attachment to the fruit of your action, and yet paradoxically allowing creativity to flow through you, trusting that there is already a greater mind that knows how best to serve the atonement, the uplifting of the whole of the sonship, every brother and every sister, who are but aspects of mind. Not your mind, for your mind is an aspect of mind. Points of light, seemingly fragmented from the one mind, the one light. Free to see, please listen carefully, right where you are. Free to see that the separation never occurred, and all attempts to keep it in place have been like battling for the rights of a chimera to exist, like insisting that the illusion of an oasis seen in a desert is truly real, and instead of going to the location and finding out what is real and what is false, standing there bickering with your arms folded across your chest, arguing for the right to be right, while reality slips through your fingers. All the while, you're standing next to a beautiful spring which bubbles forth the purest of waters. You are free now to entertain one idea totally insane to the world. I am awake now. My dream has not occurred. No separation has occurred. No distance has been traveled. Grace has already restored me, and I am free to perceive the real world. We would ask then of you this, each of you who will be listening to this tape, to spend some time doing what we just suggested, to sit quietly and ask the questions that were asked just a few minutes ago about adding and subtracting from you or to you. Sit with the words just uttered over and over again, without being in a hurry, without struggling, and see if you can touch the place that knows the truth of those words, so that that truth is felt to be your own. Then and only then will you finally begin to dissolve the power that you have given to the ego. And what is the ego but the bundle of sensations and perceptions and outpicturings that are the very attempt to do the impossible, to be separate from God. Would you be willing to surrender that value, to rescind it, to bring it back to your heart and soul, and then offer it to your Creator? Here then is the point of conversion, the turning about in the seat of the soul that must be reached by anyone who in truth would seek God, to realize that they live, yet not themselves, but that one who extends power and life has brought them into being, and they have a function to fulfill. It is their function and no one else's, and it cannot be compared. It can only be allowed. Therefore, spend some time, as much as you want, for the next few days of yours. And by the way, to those of you that feel you're going to be too busy, then let your time be used in busyness, and thereby continue to try to convince yourself that the world is real. Wait for a few days until you come to your weekend, perhaps. Then when your boss tells you you have time off, then sit with the truth. For as this truth settles into the soul, all that we have been doing prior to this will become easier and make much more sense, and it will clear the space for what is to come. For when the mind has truly awakened from illusion, there is nothing left but to be a servant of the atonement. And the only question left is, Father, how this day might I serve? And with that, we'll bring this short message to a close. There is no need at this point for a continuation of words. There is only the need for direct experience, held within the aloneness of your own mind and being. For revelation is intensely personal and cannot be communicated to anyone at any time. Yet the revelation that comes to each mind may come in a unique way, but the revelation is of one truth. That is why when any two beings happen to meet each other who are awake, there's little to do but smile and allow the phenomena of life to continue. Therefore know that we love you greatly, and we honor you for the courage it takes to let go of the world and open the palms of the heart to the grace of heaven. Rest assured that when we continue in this series, there will be much to do, but let it be done from the perspective of delightful innocence, in a mind that recognizes there's nothing else to do with time. Accept, extend the good, the holy, and the beautiful. We have paused then to remind you of peace. We have paused to remind you of the truth. Offered to you, it yet remains to be seen whether the offering will be received. Peace then be unto you always. To go in peace this day. Amen.